Hi all. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Hamish Ellis-Jack. I am the Vice Chair for the CFA Candidates Committee, and it is my great pleasure to welcome back Daniel Turner from Hunter Campbell back to one of our webinars. We very fortunately had Daniel join us for I think it was a lunchtime webinar as well, with a fantastic kind of career and job update last April. So really appreciate you coming back to talk to our candidates and members again, Daniel. Just in terms of Q&A, people, if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A function on the webinar rather than the chat, as that is the best way to make sure that your questions are seen by myself and by Daniel for him to then answer to it. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Daniel.
Thank you. It's good to be here. And Hamish, you can hear me okay? I'm coming through on the sounds.
Yep, I've got you. Everyone else, yep, seeing a few, awesome. Few nods of heads.
Perfect. So thanks for the intro and look, good to be here. The points I talk through today will be similar in tone to what we talked about last April. There's been many facets that are consistent, and there's been a few subtle changes too. So we can run through that. As always, happy to take Q&A on today's call, but also happy to connect with people post the call as well. So we can circulate my details, email and phone number for people to fire questions away post today. Just a brief rundown of Hunter Campbell for those that don't know us or me or haven't dealt with us before. We are a boutique recruitment company. We were founded in 2014. Our business is very much on the boutique side, so core specializations across accounting, finance, supply chain, procurement, ops, and we have a sales and marketing team. I lead our financial services team, which really covers positions within corporate finance, corporate strategy, and corporate development, really in the listed space, but also in private equity backed and small to medium high growth enterprises. We do a lot of work in funds management within direct investment, portfolio management, asset allocation, research, really sort of middle through to front office positions, investment banking, retail, corporate, institutional banking, product, RM positions, strategy, and then really I lead our executive search recruitment too. So roles really at the director, exec director, and at the C-suite for our clients too. Our model is very much to partner with our clients and to be an extension of their business and really to help them to be attractive when looking to take roles to market. So to give them feedback on where they need to position roles to make sure that they get the desired outcome. We provide a lot of feedback on REM and compensation, on benchmarking, titles, and really what candidates are looking for. So today is all about trends and themes that we're seeing from our perspective. It is worth noting that a lot of what we're talking is anecdotal. So we don't do salary surveys. We don't pay money to consultancies to provide detail. What we'll talk through really is the information derived from our engagement with our clients. So as we run processes, as we deal with our clients, as we deal with our candidates, we collect all the information and we take note of that and then we present that back. So it's really current trending feedback from candidates and clients alike. If we can move on to the next slide. So we'll just talk through the specialization piece in our model. So trends and themes, and point number one really in bold is the demand for talent remains high. So, we've spoken a lot about this, about the current state of the market, about it being unprecedented, and sort of, to be fair, the message we repeat is consistent all the way through. So there's really no other way to describe the market as incredibly tight for talent. Over the past year, for us as a business, we've been going for, as a collective, for 9 years, but many of our team have been in recruitment for 15, 20 years. It's the tightest that we've seen in the market for a number of reasons, and we don't really see that changing anytime soon. Wage inflation, our economy's ability to sustain the paying top dollar to candidates has been a really hot topic of discussion. The difficulty in attracting talent has meant candidates are really in the driving seat. So, good candidates, they know how to sell themselves, present themselves with authority and purpose and focus on value, have options and are able to pick and choose between these options, which again we'll talk through as we progress through. Many factors influence this, but ultimately earning potential is critical and it remains top of the list for most people, most candidates that are in the market is what is the earning potential in the role. and that is ultimately dictates level of engagement and whether we'll get the outcome we're looking for at the end of the process, especially when wage inflation is high, cost of living is high. Really, to secure the best talent, to have a seat at the table, you have to be competitive when it comes to compensation, which again we'll delve into deeper. Our advice just on that when it comes to taking roles to market is really to, and especially with candidates are more on the passive side, not applying to job ads, and where the talent pools are really limited, is to clients is to be creative, be open-minded, where you've got an opportunity to train people, where you can move on some of the criteria, be creative and not get people on board that show high potential and aptitude to learn quickly is critical. Have a think about where can you train someone, where can you bring in someone that can learn quickly, provided they give examples and an aptitude and really a willingness and attitude to learn. Provided they're a good fit for the business, then you're looking good on that piece of recruitment. On the flip side, and when we pass this feedback on to our candidates too, is focus on your ability to learn quickly. Provide examples of where you've gone into a new role or in a part of your position that you haven't learned before, that you took proactive steps to address the deficiency and lack of experience and pick something up. So it's definitely a two-way street, but by providing examples, you give potential clients peace of mind that you've got the aptitude, you've got the willingness, the desires there, and you've got some examples of what you've done in the past. The equation that many of these employers face is comparing the time and investment taken to train a high potential candidate versus ultimately time taken to source someone. We've got clients that invest in a process and that can take anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks through to a number of months. We've got clients that have had roles that have been open for 6 months, 9 months while they look for the ideal person. So really our advice again to clients is to use that time to invest into staff, into training people, again provided that they have the right potential, they're a good fit for the business, and that willingness is there. The other key part that's worth mentioning is we know that candidates are really keen to understand values and to ensure that they align to their own too. So at the moment, there's a big push on health and wellbeing. So salary is critical, but it's just one part of the picture. It is very high on the priority list, but it certainly isn't the be all. So if you're unable to compete on price, and have a really good think as to what are some of the other benefits. How can you look after your staff? How can you make them feel part of the collective on the journey as such that will ultimately attract and retain staff? Point two, Kiwis taking flight, which, we talked about this last April. It's been consistent and it hasn't really changed too much. One-way traffic at the moment. So the WHO announced an end to the coronavirus as a public health emergency sort of a couple of weeks ago. And so it brought an end to the pandemic officially. And so we are seeing people start to travel again, but long before the WHO announcement, Kiwi started to resume travelling abroad. For many, it's a rite of passage. They can go to larger financial services centres, get some experience, and then they can come back to New Zealand equipped with some good experience with some great brands that may not be able to get in New Zealand. So Kiwis are travelling. The global mobility that we see in finance professionals really is not in New Zealand's favour. Individuals who went to London pre-pandemic who were boxed in due to lockdowns have decided to stay on longer, and many that haven't travelled or have put on hold have started to travel again. So we are seeing that, not so much a mass exodus, but we're seeing a steady stream of people that are moving to predominantly the UK. Sort of contrary to what we were hearing in the media around 2022, seeing a net migration gain. We don't see it on our side. For us, we see, a dotted return of Kiwis coming back from mainly London and a few from Australia, but it's pretty much one-way traffic with people leaving to go overseas, travel a bit, gain some experience, and then come home. We spoke last year in our Hunter Campbell Insight Stock about what steps can New Zealand take as a country, and we haven't really done too much. The borders are back open. It's slightly easier to get visas, but we haven't seen the fruits of that yet. We haven't seen an influx of migrants or Kiwis returning back to NZ. So what we expect to continue is people will continue to leave, which only adds to that supply and demand equation on the ground in NZ. It just gets tighter and tighter, and that places stress on the local talent pools. In normal times, we would expect to see a decent influx of candidates around November to January. We haven't seen that. Again, despite the stats being pumped up by the media saying we're around 16,000 in the positive for 2022. So the UK in particular is the primary destination. Thanks to the changes to the visa, they've increased the age from 30 to 35. They've increased it from 2 to 3 years. Again, we expect people to continue to leave. But it is cyclical, and then we'll start to turn around in the coming 12 to 18 months plus, and then we'll start to see that talent return back to NZ. And New Zealand is, look, our proximity to Australia only makes Australia quite a compelling proposition to Sydney, Melbourne, large financial services markets. And so we're seeing people head over the ditch 3-4 hours away and develop their experience there as well. The Great Resignation we spoke about last April in a bit of detail, and it's evolved now. What we're seeing globally is this move to the Great Remorse. We're not quite seeing it on the ground in NZ, but we discussed with the global pandemic driving a reset really of personal priorities. The impact of pressures led to this Great Resignation of people resigning in droves, people looking at their lifestyle, going, what do I want to get out of life? What's important? Leaving their employment, moving to a new employer. So we had this mass sort of exodus of people leaving employment and changing employers. Following one of the surveys, there was around 40% who were planning to look for a new position in 2022. We didn't see quite that number, but we saw a lot who did make the move. And then what was really seen is the grass isn't always greener on the other side. So following the Great Resignation, there's this talk about this great remorse of new employees joining a business who ultimately left due to mainly compensation reasons. They were attracted to the new employer offering salary over and above, or earning potential over and above, have found that that quite wasn't what was put in front of them ultimately. And so we're seeing people that have a bit of regret now around what was their motivations to move when they made that step initially. So we are seeing it on the ground in NZ. It's mainly an international trend off the back of an international survey, but we are seeing, we feel calls from people that have made the move that have sort of admitted, actually, I moved for money and the culture's not great, or the raw content's not great. And actually, it was more of a sideways step career-wise as opposed to what I thought I was taking. There's some really key learnings in that, and the advice that we give to our candidates going through a process, and anyone that will look at a position in the future, really is to use the interview process, to your advantage. It's a two-way conversation. No longer it's a one-way grilling by a panel of individuals. So go into it, do your preparation, use the interview as an opportunity to ask questions. And critically for me, post first interview, debrief, write your notes down, have a think as to what are my gaps in my knowledge, what do I know, what do I not know? And then should you go back in for a second interview, use that as an opportunity to ask questions to form a really well-rounded view of the opportunity. And then in theory, post second interview, you've got a good view of what is the opportunity. Take the opportunity to meet different people, get different perspectives, people across different levels, and then really compare what is their feedback. And then again, in theory, post those meetings, you've got a really good view of who are the employees, what are their motivating factors, what is the opportunity. And then you can make a really well-rounded and informed decision of, is this the right role for me? And do I make the move or not? Versus people making a decision with only half the information. So really use the interview as an opportunity to get the information. Our advice to employers, and we don't see this so much in NZ, but we do see employers overinflating what they can offer is, be honest, be upfront, tell it as it is. Kiwis, appreciate honesty and transparency, front foot some of the challenges to the business. Of course, sing the praises of the company or the opportunity and reinforce those points, but, really be honest and transparent, and then people join the business with a full view of what are they joining, what are they walking into, and there's no surprises, into week one, into month one, into month three. Next slide, please, which will talk about the importance of communication. And so, again, a really basic point, but so critical and so important to get it right, is to have and maintain these open channels of communication. So to ensure that new employees join a business and that they're content, frequent communication, ask for feedback, check in is critical. And that is both for candidates and clients, really, to make sure that, there's no stones left unturned. You're providing feedback to your employer and they're providing feedback to you. So everyone's on the same page. And ultimately, the role is what you signed up for. Look after current employees, sort of shoot myself in the foot here, but it is easier to retain high performers and good members of staff as opposed to taking roles to market and recruiting. It is really challenging to find people. So, start with who in your business do you want to retain, who are your key people to look after and keep them in the business. Ensure that they feel valued, that you're across their stage of career, their development goals, career aspirations. And again, that all comes back to having a dynamic where you've got open communication and they feel comfortable to talk and confide in you as their manager or as their peer in the business. And ultimately, it gives you a chance to respond to their requests and ultimately career plans before they resign, which often it's too late. This is very much a two-way part for us. So again, onus on the employer, onus on the candidate. When people come in to meet me and they're looking for a new role, often one of the first questions I'll ask them is, have you spoken to your direct manager? Have you spoken to the leadership of the business around your frustrations or your career goals or your development plans? And quite often the answer is no. And that's often where people don't feel they have the relationship or the comfort to ask those questions. But if you're in a business and you've got a track record, you've been working hard, then naturally ask questions of your current employer and develop a relationship with your manager and the leadership part of the business where you feel comfortable to engage. And I think they will appreciate the open transparency to around where you're up to, and it gives them a chance to respond and before it's too late. Increase salaries and comp, which again is just a constantly evolving beast, but it's one that is critical, and we spoke about it earlier around to be at the negotiating table, you have to be competitive when it comes to comp. So we saw employers increase salaries and compensation in an attempt to attract people. It's used as a retention mechanism. It's not uncommon for candidates to have 2, 3, 4 offers on the table, and often money will be the deciding factor. Again, our advice is to, acknowledging money is important and earning potential is important, but what other factors are there, which we'll talk through a bit later on. Employers are looking at their EVP, their full value proposition to the candidates, and salaries can only go so far. They have plateaued somewhat at a higher level than what they were pre-pandemic. And now it's about what can we offer over and above, what other benefits can we offer our staff that ultimately will ensure that people are retained, but also that ensures that people will join us as an employer. The way that we really see it is to, an overinflated salary or comp cannot make up for substandard leadership, a role that is, very monotonous, a culture that isn't great or a toxic work environment and no work-life balance or flexibility. So again, money's important, but it's a part of the package. Demand exceeding supply, so unemployment low, borders are open again, Kiwis are travelling. It's just as people leave, it's creating more pressure on the local talent pool, and so we expect that to really continue moving forward. Again, high performers looked after, retained by their current employers, and so we have this talent pool that's more reactive. It's not so much applying for roles, it's passive. And so, wanting to engage in a process, but it has to tick every box. So it's hard to get these people engaged in a process and ultimately over the line. So again, that equation is quite a one-way street at the moment. There's a big push for diversity, equality, and inclusion, which really is and should be a topic on its own. We've got 11 minutes, give or take, to get through, so we could talk about that on another day. But employers are looking to broaden their diversity pools in their businesses. And again, you're looking at a smaller group within a very small talent pool. Again, it's certainly a demand versus supply equation to work around. Workplace flexibility, which is continuing to evolve. So the next slide, please, which is one of the really key ones for us that we see a lot of pressure on from our clients when we go out to meet them is, one of the big positives associated with COVID is this big push to working from home, working remotely. People prove that you don't need to be in the office. So there's a massive win and a lot of upside off the back of that. But what we're seeing is the impact of people being at home versus in the office and the impact on the organizational culture. So there is a bit of a pushback the other way. According to one of the lead economists, the 5-day week is dead. But we are seeing the people's views on remote working and flexibility evolve over time. Some of the larger employers coming out of the US, for example, Disney, Apple, Starbucks, Goldman Sachs, they're moving back towards in the office approach to their workforce. And many people are really rediscovering the perks of being in the office, around catching up with colleagues face to face, being able to have a discussion face to face, get to to get to a decision quicker versus sending emails or virtual calls, being able to have clearer boundaries around working from home or being at home and then in the office, as opposed to working from home and you feel like you're often always working in between when you've got a window. The interaction piece, though, is the key one that we see a lot of commentary on and a lot of information from our clients around having people not in the office on a full-time basis, the impact on their teams, the dynamics, the culture is and can be quite negative. And so, employers have moved towards anchor days where everyone's in the office, but we do see a shift back towards being more in the office than not, really to rebuild and to develop a culture where people feel like they're part of something, and ultimately that feeds into your retention mechanism. Our advice really is to be flexible as an employer, but also to acknowledge that the importance of an organisation's culture on attracting and retaining people. So it's definitely a bit of a balancing act to navigate. The importance of culture. So again, an effective attraction and retention tool. Employers use it as one, to attract, but two, people that buy into the culture are less likely to leave, particularly for money. If they feel valued, if they believe in the business, what they're looking to achieve, and they're on the journey, then they won't leave the business for a slight pay rise. People do look for a business that's open, that's transparent. Again, values alignment's critical. And so again, when another employer comes knocking, if they feel like they're part of something, they will tend to turn the other employer down. ESG, which is of growing importance, we talked about before about diversity, equality and inclusion. ESG, again, is another one that we're seeing significant uplift and again, constant evolution of. Employers are a lot more mindful now of ESG as a risk. Smart companies are taking steps to reduce that risk. We're seeing companies take steps to reduce their carbon footprint. We're seeing a big focus on the S side of ESG, around engagement with stakeholders, around push to increase diversity, to look after staff. Really, it's an evolving topic, and it's again one that we could spend a couple of hours today talking about. But just to acknowledge that it is trending, it's important, and it's only going to continue to increase in its importance. The next slide, please. Look, a very basic answer to the core question, which is where are we seeing demand for talent? It's across the board. So as a business, across our core disciplines of accounting, the FS side that I mentioned that I lead before, across our supply chain procurement ops team, across our sales and marketing team, our consultants are really at capacity with managing existing mandates of recruitment. So we spend 85% of our time trying to find people to fill existing roles. So the demand is constant, entry-level roles right through to leadership roles across the board. We have seen now within financial services a big uplift in risk compliance assurance. Teams are really building out their capabilities in that respect. We're seeing a big push around the data, advanced systems and use of data, manipulation of data. Roles that have the analytical component are continuing to evolve, and we're seeing, the effective use of data become a part of many different roles and many different verticals within an organisation structure. And then responsible investment, sustainable finance, ESG, again, critical. So we're seeing, additional headcount being hired into those areas as well for companies. The next part we won't talk through just because we are pushed for time, and I'm keen to see if there's any questions to run through. But this is what we talked about last time, which is really all advice that we give to our candidate base when they come in to meet me or any of our consultants around how to navigate a recruitment process. We have candidates come in that often, make demands of me or demands of our consultants around, I'm not looking, but if you can find a role, or the role has to be paying X amount of money and I need this title, then give me a call. That's all very fair and well, and we acknowledge the pressure on financials at the moment, and again, wage and inflation, but we really, advise our candidates to take, a 360 degree of an opportunity. So to look at role content, which is critical, which ultimately will sort of make or break the role around your development and how quickly you can continue to develop as an individual. The organisation, their brand, their image, their reputation, the people you're working with are critical. The leadership team, their approach, their transparency, how they interact with their teams and how they interact with the market is critical. Compensation, again, is vitally important, but we see it as a part where if it's in the right areas, and you can almost go, yep, that's great, tick, and then look for the other points that on the list. Value really is critical. Be clear on what you can do, not so much what have you done, reading through your CV or a job description, but what is the value associated to hiring you? If we bring you in, what is the return on investment? So value, really focus on your value as an individual. Preparation, again, is often one part that isn't spoken about enough, but prepare for your conversations, go unprepared, be clear, be concise, put forward your case. And you can only do that if you're prepared for any engagement that you have with a business, whether it be a phone call, a virtual call, or in person. Challenge yourself, get out of your comfort zone, be honest, be transparent, be ambitious. And the last one is network. There's, many great financial services events that Infins host. Go along, meet people. The financial services market is one big incestuous market. Go along, meet people, form new connections, make a point of sitting next to new people when you go along. Just throw yourself out of your comfort zone and form connections, and you'll find that things will come your way. Often many roles are filled through this hidden job market, which is often just due to networking. And again, particularly in a market like New Zealand within finance, it's small enough that you can navigate, many of the key people. So, make a point of going to events, learn, meet people, form connections, and then things will come your way. So that's sort of for me to wrap up. A lot of information in a very short window of sort of 27 minutes up until this point. But as I mentioned at the beginning, always happy, always free to take emails, phone calls, to connect with people one-on-one, post this to discuss any of these areas too. Should anyone have any questions that they'd like to discuss in a more private setting as well.
Excellent. Hey, thanks, Daniel. Just mindful of everyone's time. We've had a few quick questions come through. Firstly, and this was a question I kind of had myself. In the marketplace, are you seeing that the CFA designation is well understood and therefore valued by employers at the moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. It comes down to the employer. So it's one that certainly holds weight and holds value. We have employers, particularly in in finance, in funds management companies, organizations who often it's on their list of priorities, and often it's a clear point on if someone's got it, it's a clear preference, and it can be a differentiating factor between two candidates at the back end of a process. So I do feel it holds weight within finance, within, say, the NZX listed space and corporate finance roles that, again, ultimately people are coming out of investment banking, or could be funds management, or, the big four transaction services, corporate finance deals teams. Often is a much more, variance of understanding in the listed space. But the ones that know of it certainly hold it in high regard, and it's a key. Again, if you've got two people, one's got it, 9 times out of 10, they'll move forward with that person.
Yeah, no, that's certainly a good answer. I think in my experience as well, having a CFA charter holder in the organisation obviously increases the understanding and appreciation of that significantly. Another quick question. So what are the key skills that you would recommend that the finance sector is needing at the moment, that our candidates and members on the call should look to develop as part of their professional development and studies?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think the data part I spoke about before is evolving, and it's consistent, but it's going from analysis to more in-depth financial modelling. We're seeing a lot of our clients now, that sort of term of programming capability is one that really is trending. And I'm not expecting everyone to sort of go down and do programming courses, but if you work in a role and you're, the quant piece comes naturally, that is the next evolution, is to go down that pathway. So I feel the programming, advanced analytics piece is a key one. The sustainable finance, ESG, responsible investment space, and we've done a lot of recruitment for clients in that space, mainly NZ Super, that is one that is changing. The regulations changing, the reporting requirements are changing, and we feel there'd be no shortage of opportunity in that space. So to get ahead of that, to take online courses or just courses on that, I feel like we'll differentiate.
Well, the CFA ESG certificate is certainly something that they've come out with, which is a very good product to kind of meet that demand.
Yeah, exactly. And look, the talent pool for people in that space is very limited. So to, again, get your head and shoulders above the rest, to say, I took a course to learn these fundamentals, will put you in good stead too. That'll be the good one.
Thanks for that, Daniel. Hey, just very much appreciate your time and mindful of the fact that it's just after 1 o'clock. So look, we'll just wrap up now. But thank you, Daniel, first and foremost for your time again. It's always really, I think, really valuable insights that you share with us from the coalface of recruitment in the job sector in New Zealand at the moment for the financial services industry. And thank you everyone for making the time. Hopefully you've all taken something away from today's webinar. And Daniel is always happy to have chats, copies, Zoom calls, whatever it is, to address any recruitment concerns or questions that you guys might have. So thank you everyone, and thanks again, Daniel. Take care.
Awesome. Cheers, team. Thank you.
Bye.